Okay, does anyone have any questions or any comments or anything they'd like to share?
Yes, I wanted to share two quick things from class today. One was in standing meditation, typically when I feel the fourth digit, the connection between that and the elbow, then I feel like the kind of engages down to the fourth toe. But today, which feels really good, and other things, but today when I was just doing standing meditation and I was feeling feet paced earth, it felt like the fourth toe engaged first in a different pathway, and it felt really different. And it felt I had the feeling where I've had with my big toe, where my big toe presses down, but I felt like my fourth toe was pressing down, and it felt like then it connected up to my arms that way and to the fourth finger. And when that happened, I felt like typically when I do it, I feel like connected to the earth, and I feel like I'm receiving from the earth. But it feels like I didn't realize this, but it felt like it's mainly my feet connecting. But when that happened, it felt like my whole body became part of the earth. And I hadn't realized, I felt like I was receiving from the earth and supported by the earth, but there was a part where I felt separate. And when this happened, I felt like I was part of the earth. And it felt like, I don't know how to describe it, but basically like, instead of having to draw energy, I was energy. And my whole body just, it was like instantaneously full of chi. It's kind of like with air, I have AirPods, and like their battery life is terrible, but when you plug them in, you come back a minute later and they're like fully charged, basically. It felt like that. And it felt like the earth was this giant battery, which I felt before, but it felt like a separate thing for me. I felt like I was a giant battery with the earth. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Then the other thing I want to share real quick is when I was doing the form, I felt like spontaneous movements, like my body being moved by the chi. But when we were doing the form, my hand started flapping really, really, really intensely.
Yeah.
Where I felt like I was like, am I damaging myself? Because it felt really hard, and it was actually really painful.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I gonna like destroy my wrist? But it felt like my body wanted to do it. So I let it go, and it just flapped the whole time. And one, my form was a lot better, which was surprising. But two, it felt like it opened up my whole right side. And then at the end, it kind of like went the opposite way, and I felt like my pisiform really wanted to extend. But it was really interesting to have such an intense movement like that felt like it would be bad for me, but it was actually felt really good for me. So I just want to share those two things.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. When you start shaking like that, it's like it can be really scary.
Yeah.
Like you shake a lot, like not all, like it's actually not always, and it doesn't happen necessarily to everyone. But when it starts shaking violently like that, you're kind of like, is this like okay? Is this like normal?
Yeah.
And like, yeah. And if you have a significant blockage, it can shake like that. And when it releases through your fascial layers, it actually shakes like that. And so, but yeah, it's actually rather, I'm gonna use the word violent. So
yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, and I think those instances have only happened, I think maybe a few times in my training. It happens more to certain individuals than less. But when it happened, first time it happened with my legs, with my first Taoist master. And I was like, oh my gosh, it felt like an earthquake actually. And I was like, oh my gosh. And my teacher, he's like, oh good, you're releasing. And it's like he was so nonchalant about it. And I was like, oh, okay. But
Reminds me
like,
of someone I know.
yeah, well, you learn from your teachers. And then you experience it and then you survive through it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, it was not a big deal. So, but um, anyways, but so yeah, that actually is. And then from what I can tell, it's actually that you have a release like that, your fascia really readjusts, and so that's why you feel. Yeah, that's why. So it's actually why the entire right side, and the other thing that actually happens is your muscular patterns reset from the shaking. It actually releases the old patterning, and so yeah, so you have a you repattern, and so yeah, that's actually a really good experience.
That makes sense because it feels like unfamiliar and kind of
Yeah,
new.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like a
yeah.
baby
It's
that
gonna.
doesn't quite know how to move.
Yeah. That's exactly the feeling. It feels unfamiliar. It's actually, yeah, right after it kind of feels like, it's like, ooh, like I'm not quite sure how to move this thing anymore. And it's like, I mean, not quite to that extent, but it's like it kind of almost feels like that's unfamiliarity. So yeah, it's actually if you actually get a good movement lesson, it actually feels really unfamiliar afterwards. Such as like Feldenkrais and a certain, like whenever you actually learn good movement or something good happens, like you feel unfamiliar afterwards. Like,
That
oh
makes
wow,
total
this
sense.
feels like different, this feels new. So and so like kind of freedom and unfamiliarity, they kind of go hand in hand. And so in some ways, like Tai Chi, you could actually make the argument Tai Chi is the art of actually becoming more and more familiar with unfamiliarity, where you get accustomed to unfamiliarity and you seek more and more unfamiliarity. And that's actually what gives you so much more freedom and exploration and actually good movements over time. So, and it's actually also what keeps the novelty alive. That's why it's so good.
That makes total sense. And that makes sense because when you said that, it reminded me that is the feeling after I've gotten body work, like good body work. That is the feeling where it's like,
Yeah. Good body work will do that actually.
yeah,
Like afterwards, you're like, oh, like this whole thing moves different. And so, but people are looking for familiarity to get better. And I think what people don't realize is a secret is if you want to get stronger or better, oftentimes the solution is actually unfamiliarity. So and this is actually why change is so difficult because, it's the same thing as vulnerability. Vulnerability is a lack of familiarity, actually. That's why it's so vulnerable. And it's kind of like authentic movement, movement that you don't have that got contrived, but authentic movement is really vulnerable because, we're not used to just moving the way we want to move. Starting with your teenage years, you start posturing to be cooler, to be more accepted, and so it's kind of a lot of different things happen, and then you learn what's called good posture. You try and stand straight, but you lose actually the freedom to explore your movements, and so it's like super. And the same thing like with yourself, and so actually people, and it's one of the reasons why in vulnerability only can we find authenticity, which can only be found through exploration. And so ironically, we don't think about this, but we think that we find authenticity in comfort. Like this feels like me, and most people refer to comfort, but actually we actually really find it in a lack of familiarity. Like when we come across new things and we're like not sure, and we're exploring that. And in that exploration, the way we respond, our systems respond, and the way we handle that, in that base, that's beyond what we've learned, the way we respond and the way our system responds, the way that happens is beyond anything we've learned because it's completely unfamiliar, parts of us that never engaged needs to engage in order for you to be able to handle that. So that part is all uncharted territory. It's all authentically us. That's just always been there, laying dormant. And that's actually when people find that, there's a lot of joy. Or there can be also a lot of shame if what you find is something that is not a social norm. There can also be a lot of fear, like, oh, what if I'm not accepted? But in general, it causes a sense of authenticity, like, oh, this is who I am. If it's safe enough for you to feel that. So, anyways, that
Thank you.
was good.
That was really helpful. And that really, I realized as you said that, I feel like you were reading my mind because earlier in the class, I was processing through exactly what you talked about, some things from my childhood where I realized I had basically like not wanted to be a certain way. And I kind of postured myself a different way to try to like perform. And I feel like that release was related to that because I'd been basically like, as you like, I had stopped being authentic to myself and had created a fixed kind of persona. And I feel like that release was related to that, and then makes more sense, that unfamiliarity feeling kind of in light of that.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. That was really vulnerable. That was really powerful. I was like, yeah, I think that, because you shared that, whoever's listening into this, actually, I think we'll be able to get a lot more out of it. And that's vulnerable sharing. It's really powerful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good. And then just to make a quick comment on that connection, if you read the classics, it says that you will feel like a mountain, when you root properly or when you ground properly. They say you will feel like a mountain where you're part of the earth. But the mountain is not separate. And you'll probably feel like you felt like you're part of the earth. You kind of felt like, yeah, you literally kind of felt that your feet were stuck, or like not even stuck. Like it just literally felt part of the earth.
Yeah.
Or yeah, right. And you kind of felt more like a mountain, if you will, or like a contour that stuck out from the earth that just shaped you according to your body, right?
Yeah. I felt like I couldn't, like no one could move me because I was like stuck there.
Yeah. So that's basically what they're talking about when they're talking about you will feel like a mountain. And so that's a real thing that happens when you relax properly, and your fascia like actually has a chance to be held in such a way where there's good tensegrity, and then it basically is held in such a way where it's in the tensegrity is in, how should I say, alignment is the wrong word. It's like properly attached to the earth. So when it happens, the energy flows properly, your body's relaxed properly. So it actually, you're literally, I would say from a physics perspective, you are literally part of the earth. Because, how like when we're practicing application, I will say, when someone's arm is touching you, how do you know that's your arm or whether it's the other person's arm?
Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. That's
Right.
really helpful.
I mean, like, yeah, from a physics perspective, there's like zero difference. And so, yeah, so the bigger question actually isn't whether you're part of it or not part of it. Like, of course you're part of it, but are you like, is the contact point such where you're, like, what is it part of? So it's kind of just really, so just like the other person's arm, is that your arm or the other person's arm? And here's the answer, and this is actually not something that people think about. The arm belongs to whoever has got a more complex nervous system. And the person who's got the more complex nervous system actually controls that arm. And typically the actual neural connections that you know, if it's your arm, your neural connections to that arm typically will win out compared to the neural connections the other person has in order to control your arm. But if someone has been practicing diligently and is more familiar with how to control your arm than you are, that means that that person has more neural connections than you to control that arm. That is, you know, like what martial arts is.
That's why when I've pushed with you in the past, that's my experience where I feel like I touch you and I feel like I go back, but I feel like you're controlling my nerve firings, not me.
Yeah. That's the experience. That's approximate experience, and all that really is that the other person is just more familiar, you know, with just how, you know, like if you want to say nerves firing, it sounds mysterious, but really it's just you're just more familiar because you just done it more, so you're just more familiar with how the whole thing actually just moves. That's really it. And so anyway, so I just kind of want to just comment on that experience that you had, and just that you just keep relaxing, and you know, if you don't insist on repeating the experience, which I feel like you're not doing anymore, which is really great, in that case you will keep having these experiences, and then one day you start having these experiences really consistently without having to think about it, but they come and go for a long time because these are high balance. These are actually like high balance experiences where the body balances to a new degree. But you know, such a new state of balance is difficult to maintain because the body's not used to it. And so it goes back and forth until it can find a new equilibrium to actually get there. But in order for that to happen, you need to keep finding new balance points, like new states of familiarity. That's why traditionally we say, like, don't try and hold on to the experience, let go, don't look for it again. And really, it should actually be for saying, you know, let the new come, let the new come, let the new experience come in continuously.
That is really helpful. The new comment.
Yeah.
More clear. That's like a more clear focal point, or it's the picture is clearer than don't hold on.
Yeah, and you can't be looking for something new either. That's why they don't talk about it, because that's why I always say just notice what you notice today, and that's the whole non-dual contemplation of observation without evaluation. You're not looking for something great. You just that day noticing what you're supposed to notice that day.
That makes sense.
Okay, very good. Okay, now unfortunately I'm already at time, and so I need to get going here. But thank you for sharing, and for those of you who want to ask questions or share, I apologize having to not be able to take any more of that. So, but have a great rest of the day. Have a divine day, and have a great day at Dao.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Master Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Master Kim.
You're welcome. Welcome. Thank you.